All right, Drew. I'm going to take you back. 2012. Where were you?
Starbucks.
Starbucks. And I was a freshman in high school. Okay. So 2012, we were asking ourselves one simple question in the football world. Is Joe Flacco elite? Now, what if I came and traveled back to you 11 years ago and I said, hey, in 11 years, we're going to have this exact same conversation. Oh, and by the way, we're not going to have this conversation throughout the entire year. We're going to have this conversation only within the last couple weeks of the season. Oh, and then on top of that, he just got off his couch like 5 weeks ago. Oh, then on top of that, he doesn't play for the Ravens anymore. He plays for the Browns. So we're asking ourselves the exact same question 11 years later, after a Super Bowl run, is Joe Flacco elite? In the last 4 weeks, Joe Flacco has the most passing yards of any quarterback. He is tied for first in passing touchdowns. He's top 10 in passing touchdown percentage. He's top 10 in yards per pass thrown. He's 3-1 as a starter in a very, 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 very narrow shot at the number one seed in the AFC. Now, obviously, he has only propelled them a little bit further, but I think we all kind of figured out or thought, hey, when Deshaun Watson goes down, season's kind of over, especially when we don't really see too much of DTR and PJ Walker sucks, but then Joe Flacco gets called up off his couch and he goes, yeah, sure, I guess I can play a couple of snaps. And he leads them to a 3-1 record. Great rapport with Amari Cooper already and David Njoku, who are arguably top 10 in their respectable positions, a top 10 offensive line, a serviceable running back, the best defense in the league. So, can Joe Flacco lead a Nick Foles-esque type season and lead the Browns to a deep playoff run or even maybe a Super Bowl, especially in a weak AFC conference? That's two
Yeah, I
questions for
mean,
you there.
I think the AFC is as open as it's ever been. I think
Mm-hmm.
realistically, as we sit here and talk about the AFC, everybody's mostly worried about the Bills, right? The Ravens, of course, also.
Right.
But have you ever tuned into a game on Sunday and you're watching your Cowboys and the other team has a backup quarterback going, and all of a sudden it's the middle of the third quarter, and you're like, holy shit, are we going to lose to this backup quarterback? It happened to the 49ers earlier this year against these same Browns with PJ Walker. These backup
Mm-hmm.
quarterbacks, man, they come in, they got nothing to lose. What's Flacco got to lose? He's going to get cut and go back to where he was at? No, man, he's coming out, he's gripping
Yep.
it, he's ripping it, he's slinging it. He looks great. It's fun to watch. And I mean, this is the year of weird quarterback stories. Obviously, my boy crashed and burned a little bit last week, but still a great story. But I'm here for the content, man. Joe Flacco to the Super Bowl. I listen. If my team makes it to the Super Bowl, I'm okay seeing the Ravens because they already beat us once in that time period back then. Is Joe Flacco elite? But bring me Joe Flacco too.
Mm-hmm.
We got a pound of flesh we need against that man also, so I'm good with either of them. I think it's an awesome story. The thing about it is the defense is really, really good, and we know that can carry you through the playoffs, especially when the physicality ramps up.
Absolutely.
Mari Cooper is really, really good. He cost me my fantasy championship this week. And I don't know if Joe Flacco is really, really good, but I know Joe Flacco will hang in the pocket and he'll throw the football. And that's more than we could say for their starter this year. Deshaun looked awful all season. So it does make me wonder what the New York Jets were thinking. You know, they could have turned to some guy that was sitting on his couch and look what he's done. But talented defense over there also. So if I had to guess here and now, I don't think the Browns are making it to the Super Bowl, but do you want to be the AFC team that has to play the Browns in the playoffs? If you're the first seed or the second seed or the third seed, do you want to see the Browns? I sure wouldn't. It reminds me of last year as the Lions. The Lions were like 7-1, 6-1 coming down the stretch, and it's like, are they going to make the playoffs? And we're like, God, I hope they don't make the playoffs. Who wants to see Detroit right now? I think the Browns got that same flavor right now. Nobody wants to play them. Like that. First of all, it's
Especially if you have a
embarrassing.
lackluster offense. If you have a lackluster offense, especially, you're going to be kind of worried about it, right? You don't want to be Indianapolis. You don't want to be Jacksonville. You don't want to be the Chiefs trying to go against Cleveland's defense. That's the last thing.
You definitely
If
don't
you're
want to be the
Baltimore,
Chiefs.
right? If you're Baltimore, Miami, or Buffalo, you're a little bit less worried about it, but you're still not wanting and begging to get the Browns. You want Indy, you want Jacksonville, you want the Chiefs. You don't want Cleveland. That's kind of one of the teams you really don't want to face, especially, and it all has to do with obviously the defense there. That's kind of where we're going to, hang our hat on is the defense. But it's not like we're going, oh, well, the defense is going to do all the work and Joe Flacco's just kind of going to be okay. He's been good, and I'm not going to go and sugarcoat it. Yes, he has 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. It definitely doesn't look great. But when you have the best defense in the league, does it really matter that much? Are those mistakes super costly, right? Like Nick Mullins throwing 4 picks and losing them the game, right? That's the entire reason that they lost the game. The only reason that they lost the game, Minnesota did. Joe Flacco isn't losing them games. He's winning them games. And obviously, Amari Cooper and David Njoku is a big part of that. 265 yards, 11 catches. That's not to scoff at, right? Browns franchise record. But we're not looking at this Browns team as there's a backup quarterback who's not very good. If we could just pressure them and make sure they can't do anything on offense, they're not going to do anything at all. No, we're looking at it as this defense can stop us. And if Joe Flacco can do just enough to get the ball forward and get into the end zone, we might lose this playoff game. We're legitimately looking at that 11 years later from 2012 and looking at Joe Flacco as a potential threat.
I just want to stick a pin in 2 things that you said in that. You said that the AFC teams are more worried about facing Joe Flacco than they are about facing Patrick Mahomes. And I don't necessarily disagree with you. How crazy of a statement. Matter of fact, you should put that as the title to this whole podcast, because then we'll get all the views in the world. AFC teams more afraid of Flacco than Mahomes. And then the other thing is I think that with the touchdowns, interceptions you're mentioning, when you lead the league in touchdowns, you can live with 10 to 15 picks. That's why, although there have been games this year where the Dak game against the Bills and now the Purdy game against the Ravens, where the picks were the problem. Whether we could sit here and debate, oh, this should have been caught, oh, it was a tipped ball. It doesn't matter. The picks happened. Mm-hmm. 2 really good teams played each other in both those games. Dallas Cowboys and the Bills and the Niners and the Ravens. 2 really good teams played. One team turned the ball over. One team didn't. I'm going to let you guess which team won. We already know the answer to that. So when it comes to touchdowns and interceptions, if you're throwing touchdowns, you're going to throw interceptions. And if you're threatening the defense, the thing is you can't throw 3 picks on 3-yard crossers across the middle. But if you're dialing up the deep ball to Amari Cooper 8 times a game and one of those results in a pick, but the other 7 are probably going to result in a couple of completions and a couple of pass interference plays. So when you have a quarterback that's willing to let it rip like that, that's scary and that's threatening. And again, what does Joe Flacco have to lose?
Absolutely. And you have to ask the question. You mentioned Deshaun Watson earlier. You got to ask the question is, what are the Browns going to do at the end of the season, during the offseason with Deshaun Watson? And unfortunately, looking at the contract situation and cutting him, trading him, all that stuff, there is a situation, a pre-June 1st trade situation in the offseason where they actually won't lose a ton of money. I actually think they save $1 million when I was recently looking at it. That could be a situation, but who's really trading for Deshaun Watson? And if you just want to get rid of him, you could just kind of get rid of him for cheap, late round pick, something stupid, and get anyone else in there, because obviously this team is poised and ready to make a run for the future. The team's young, it's hungry, it's ready. I don't think the Browns are really going anywhere. They've been building this for a couple of years now, and they thought they had all the pieces when they traded for Deshaun Watson and gave him that fully guaranteed contract. Obviously, that has not worked out. They need to figure out something with Deshaun Watson, because again, if they cut him, they're going to lose a lot of money. Excuse me. If they cut him, they're going to lose a lot of money. And if they trade him pre-June, June 1st, next offseason, they'll be fine. They'll save a little bit. But outside of that, they're kind of stuck with him right now.
Yeah. The problem with the Browns organization is it doesn't seem like the organization that's going to take the bath on that type of player. Could they get rid of him? Could they move on? All those are great questions. They absolutely could. Any team can do anything that they want if they're willing to pay for it. Look at the way the Rams have danced around the salary cap for a number of years now. If you're willing to guarantee enough money and put it to signing bonus and all this other stuff, you can do anything you want with the cap. But the Browns just aren't that franchise. And I feel like you have a ownership over there that's kind of questionable. And I feel like if I was the owner, I would say to my coaching staff, hey, if you can do this with Flacco, why can't you do this with our $60 million a year quarterback we paid? You can't get this out of Deshaun Watson. But my question, my red flag on Deshaun Watson is, does he even really want to play? He's gotten paid. Every time he hurts his pinky toe, he has to sit down for 3 weeks, so it seems.
Yep.
So could they move on from him? Yes. Will they? Probably not. But it's going to be an interesting contrast in the offseason because there's another team that has a way overpaid quarterback right now who's not performing well that looks like they're moving on from him. And, we're going to see where those teams go in the next couple of years. And I mean, I think the Browns are good enough to where they could probably make it work. But man, could you just imagine someone serviceable? I keep bringing this man up. Can you imagine if they signed Kirk Cousins in the offseason? With all that defense and all that talent, and let's not forget about the running back they got coming back next year. Hopefully, he'll return to form. But that's Kirk Cousins and Chubb and that offense and that defense. Like, who wants to play them? Nobody wants to play them now.
Absolutely.
Who would want to play with them with a killer, back there behind the center as opposed to Deshaun Watson? Which is crazy because maybe Deshaun Watson still has something, but he hasn't shown anything. So
no, this man went from MVP candidate before he went on let's call it hiatus. His hiatus, let's call it that. And to nothing. I mean, he's a bottom 15, bottom 20 quarterback in the league, and he looks horrible, or bottom 10. He looks like a bottom 10 quarterback in the league. It's not a great. So I think that with these types of teams, these almost poverty franchise teams like the Browns, it's kind of hard not to root for them in these type of situations.